the handouts in front of you. But we are pleased to have our presenters with us online. And first of all, representing KU Medical Center Cancer Center is Mary Damewood, who is the Director of Finance. So Mary, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you. Elaine, do you have the slides or should I share?
If you can share,
okay.
I can do that as well. Either way.
Okay. Let me pulled up somewhere. All right, let me put it in presentation mode here. All right, there we go. So thank you for having me here today. When we talked in January, when I came out and talked in January, are you seeing my screen okay? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. When I came out and talked in January, we talked state funds, which is our cancer center in total. Today, we're talking the JCERT budget, which kind of narrows our scope a little bit. This is our clinical research center that you're seeing online. In 2009, we were awarded the 8-cent sales tax along with K-State Olathe and KU Edwards. And the first few years, what that money was spent on was renovating this building to make it our clinical research center. Since then, those funds are used to pay the bond on the building, to do the maintenance on the building, and also pay our staff that works in Johnson County on clinical trials. The Clinical Research Center is for our early phase program is what it was designed for. If you're not familiar with the early phase program, that is first in human clinical trials. So they bring new drugs to the market. They just determine the side effects and the effects that it has on cancer. So that the building houses the outpatient clinic space, also office space, clinical lab, and pharmacy for those patients. We also have our Masonic Cancer Alliance in there. That is our outreach program to bring those trials across the state of Kansas. Our bioanalytical lab, they analyze samples and blood for the trials. CTSU is, they're mostly non-cancer trials. It's outpatient clinic space for non-cancer trials. Our sleep lab is in that building. Also memory care. Memory care is in there because they diagnose patients and try to put them on study. And then our Alzheimer's Disease Center is also in there, in that building. Sorry, my little advanced buttons are, there we go. So on this slide, I would just like to share with you where we started to where we are today. In 2009, when we started receiving the JCERT funds, we had 8 active clinical trials, and now we have almost 200 patients on trials. I think the patients on trials starting in 2012 when the building was opened were 26, and now we have over 600 a year. Our clinical trial staff increased from 19 at that time to 232 budgeted for next year. And our clinical revenue increased from just a little under $1 million to a projected of $12.3 million for this year. Besides research, we focus on education. We noticed there was a huge turnover rate with the pandemic. Our industry got hit really hard, and we were like 25 to 30% turnover for a few years. So we developed a education department, or a training department, and they really focused on providing certifications for our staff to help them want to stay, but also to make them more marketable in the future. So 30% of our staff have now been SOCR certified, which is the clinical research certification. They did a prep course. They've also done manager training and have worked really hard to promote from within. So that decreased our turnover rate from 27% to only 12% in 2023. So this is a view of the budget. I kind of consolidated it a little bit. What you should have in your packet, or however you get it, will have 3 additional columns, which is just the projection for FY26. because it's not up for approval. It's just to show you where we're headed, basically. So I've consolidated this a little bit just so it'll fit on the slide. As you can see, our revenue is budgeted right between where we're running and where we had budgeted last year at $24.1 million. To kind of go through that a little bit, all the schools decided to budget JCERT sales tax at $8 million next year, which is a little conservative to where we're running this year. Our clinical trial collection number is the reason that we're looking so good for this current year. I had budgeted it at only 8.2, and now we're running more like 12.3 for this year. And I'm budgeting it at a little over 13 next year. This is due to our trials just picking back up since the pandemic. And also our trials are getting more and more complicated, which makes the budgets with the pharma companies much larger. So I think we'll continue to see that growth go up with our clinical trial revenue. The third line there, the CRC clinical services, you'll see it's zeroed out for this year and for next year. This was an old agreement we had when we first opened the CRC so that we could get health system to come and be in the building to provide pharmacy and lab and the nursing care. So we used to put the revenues and expenses for health system on there, and that agreement's kind of dissolved at this point. So we've erased to that effect this year. Another large change in revenue this year that you might notice is we used to budget KUCC support from our cancer center at $2 million. That was just basically their guarantee to us of a backstop. And it's not that they would not still backstop us, they would, but our clinical trial revenue is so high that we took in that out of the budget for next year. So revenues budgeted at $24.1 million, which is right in the middle of where we were. But, you know, that's taking out $3.5 million of the health system revenue. So it's really, revenue is really doing quite good for us. Total expenditures for next year budgeted at 23.7. The major difference there is the payroll is budgeted to increase. As you can see, we're running over budget for this year, and that's because our turnover rate went down, and I had budgeted shrinkage because our turnover rate had been so high. So it's running a little high this year, and it's going to be higher next year. I've put in the annual increases and also an addition of 8 employees for next year. So $20 million in payroll is the budget for next year. The difference with our operating expenses is that effect that I was telling you on the CRC, the hospital being in that building, because that agreement dissolved. It looks like we're saving a lot of money because we had budgeted $5.8 million last year, but that's just the effect of the health system. So really the other operating expenses and also the facility expenses are staying pretty stable. We went up, I think, 3% or something for inflation, but it wasn't much. So in total, we're budgeting a $390,000 profit for next year, which is much improved over the $1.5 million loss we had budgeted for last year. The bottom section there you'll see is our reserves. We are budgeting to increase our capital reserves, and that's due to just the age of the building. We're starting to have some repairs, and also we are potentially going to remodel that building to include some research imaging in there. So that's why we're trying to build those funds. And then our operations reserves, as you can see, is $10 million. Our goal for operations reserve is always to have 6 months of payroll. In case of something like a pandemic where we have to put trials on hold, it'll just buy us time until everything can get back to normal. So $14 million in reserves is our projected for budget next year. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
Any questions for Mary? Hearing none. Thank you so much, Mary.
All right, thanks.
All right, next up from the KU Edwards campus, we have Stuart Day, who is the Vice Provost. Stuart, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you all here. I'm going to try to share my screen. Do you see it in
You do.
presentation mode?
We're good.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I have quite a short slideshow, but certainly happy to answer any questions. I just want to start out giving you, this is not a graph you can necessarily read from where you are, but you can see from spring 2011 to spring 23 here, we've seen really nice growth in a variety of JCERT programs. That's what we focus on the KU Edwards campus with our JCERT funding, or graduate and undergraduate programs that are really workforce oriented. So at any given time, we have these, 5,000 to 6,000 credit hours. At any given 8-week session, we have 1,500 students. We're growing at about 20% a year. You can see that top. I'm not going to go through each one of these, and I realize it's a pretty busy slide, but you can see that top program that there is a Bachelor of Health Science that we started in 2021, and it's really taken off. It's growing at a strong rate. Other programs that are really doing quite well our information technology, that's up about 25% year over year. I mentioned Bachelor of Health Sciences, up almost 30% year over year. Organizational communication, 28.7. Exercise science, 38.5. About half of the programs on our campus are JCERT programs. We try to have very strong programming in non-JCERT as well, just to make sure we're diversified. One of our huge programs there, KBOR approved about a year ago, criminal justice. That's growing really strong. We have a couple hundred applicants already for fall, and that should be one of KU's bigger majors before too long. And that one's available online. It's also available at the Lawrence campus. So I mentioned those non-Edwards programs just because they're key to making sure that this is a healthy campus moving forward. We have some, you see there, I mentioned the penultimate mention there by biotechnology. We really take care to look at programs that are smaller, and we try to do this before we get a message from KBOR saying to take a look at the program. So biotechnology is an amazing boutique JCERT program that we have, but it really hasn't taken off numbers wise. So we're combining that with applied biological sciences. So we have programs that are growing like crazy, and then some that have not taken off or stagnated a little. And I wanted to let you know all of them were, very, very careful to watch those and make sure to reconfigure them as necessary. So the vast amount of our budget goes towards programs. And so we have some other expenses, but really we're highly focused on subsidizing programs that are amazing for Kansas, amazing for the KC metro area. This morning, we proposed a human and organization performance effectiveness degree, for example, that will also be competency-based education, and it'll have an Edwards component too. That would be a JCERT program that we're hoping to get approved by JCERT. And so always moving forward, always working with KU Med and also with K-State Olathe. We have a couple programs we work with KU Med on, Master of an MPH, and then Applied Stats is the other one. So two great collaborations there. And then Dean Wolf and I have been working on some possible collaborations for the future. So we're always excited about that. I know you can't see the budget very well. We've tried to simplify it. I know you have a much more detailed version, but I want to note you can see their academic programs under expenditures are our main expense. Under all accounts, our ending balances. We're trying to keep those fairly trimmed, even though we also need to have some reserves in case there's another downturn. we'll use some of that funding to work on some of the pavement around the best building. The best building was funded with JCERT funds, and so we're excited about the future. We're excited that all three entities of JCERT are spending the money wisely, investing it wisely, and we're doing our best to be good stewards. So I'm happy to stand for any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Vice Provost Day? Yes, Regent Winter.
Stuart, you mentioned the two different biotech programs that you're merging, is that right?
Yeah, we're merging biotechnology and applied biological sciences, and that has not been approved yet. But what we're going to do is, instead of having two standalone programs, tuck biotechnology probably under applied biological sciences, and reduce slightly the number of faculty members we have in that area. We're really proud of the biotechnology program, but it's a heavy in-person lab-based program, and there are fewer students looking for that type of experience these days.
So to what extent, if any, did you collaborate with Kansas State on reordering those programs? Did you discuss with them, for example, what programs they might have that might be rolled in, and where you all could cooperate?
You know, we haven't talked about rolling programs together, just because we do have our separate lanes. Although I happen to have discussed this pretty extensively with Ben Wolf, just to get some of his advice to make sure that any changes we make fit well with what they're doing. Our recent discussions have been more based on what we might do to partner in terms of clinical trials, just because all three legs of JCERT work so heavily in the clinical trials area, or have the potential to. And Ben, if you want to mention anything related to this, please feel free to. But we do speak almost weekly and collaborate. In this particular case with biotechnology, we haven't necessarily, although every once in a while the topic of distilling and brewing does come up in that area.
Regent Brass.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I was just looking at your expenditures and the line item on the academic programs. I wanted to understand, what does that entitle?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you point me to where I didn't hear? Can you point me to what your question is?
On the programs line item for the expenditure. I believe we have 7,285,000.
Yeah, so that is the total for the list of programs that we have. So the BBA, BSIT, project management, exercise science, organizational communication, masters in accounting, applied stats, civil engineering, health sciences. And so that's our main item. And that's, so I think it's a little unclear on the form, the way it's been condensed, but those are the expenses to pay largely faculty to teach in the individual programs.
Okay, because I saw the faculty line item and I was confused a little bit as to what this charge would be, because it's a majority of the expenditure.
Yeah, the vast majority there. Thank you. And sorry, I see that it's a little bit unclear.
Thank you, sir.
Stuart, given the close relationship, and the same question could obviously be posed for Ben at K-State, Olathe, with such a close relationship between your campus and the local economy, what's your avenue for staying in touch with economic development organizations, job creators, to make sure that not only are you meeting the demands of the workforce today, but forecasting what those will be in the future?
Yeah, so in addition to a lot of data that we look at from Lightcast and other areas, including Mark, we have a workforce development advisory board that meets 4 times a year. That's filled with local HR reps and others. We have a board of advisors that's more of a C-suite board. And then we have individual program boards. So for example, project management has a board. And so we regularly in those meetings focus on gathering input about what needs are, what new programs might be needed. We will put up curricula in front of board members and ask them to tear it apart, tell us what has changed, what their needs are. I just rolled off a director position on the Overland Park chamber. That's also been an outstanding source of information for us about what community needs are. And Ben, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but we do spend a good amount of our time analyzing workforce needs.
Anything to add to that, Ben? That's a good answer.
No, I would basically, we do the exact same thing that Stuart's talking about. I serve on the Olathe Chamber Board. Here, we both participate regularly in the Kansas City Area Development Council, KC Chamber events. I would say we're very in tune to what the metro needs are, and kind of the changing workforce dynamics that's happening here in the metro-wide area.
Very good.
A follow-up question for that.
Okay, follow-up question from Regent Brasker.
Are we involving the companies that are hiring this talent into probably helping out on the workforce development side as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Ben has amazing answers to this as well. But, just to give one example, on 2 of our boards, Lori Menard sits there, and she is the head of HR for Garmin. So multiply that times 100 other people who are representing their industry needs, and we meet that well. Now, we also look to a lot of other folks, for example, superintendents of school districts in the area, and really trying to, predict what needs are, impact programs. So we have a big day, biotech day, for example, when we bring students from all over, hundreds of students, to come in and use our labs and start to understand what we have to offer. But we also talk to their teachers during that time, let them know about upcoming trends. So it's really a K-12 and beyond endeavor. And it's not always easy, as you can imagine, to keep up with workforce needs. And it's not always obvious what the needs are. And so we dig in quite a bit. We have exercises where we work with our board members, and we always ask those next questions after they kind of tell us, wow, we need people who are prepared. They need to communicate. And we really dig down and figure out what those soft and hard skills are.
Very good. All right, any other questions for Stuart? Thank you so much, Stuart. With that, we'll turn it over now to Ben Wolf, the Dean and CEO of the K-State Olathe campus. Ben, welcome.
Thank you much. Let me see. Am I showing the correct
You
screen
are.
there? All right, there we go. Well, good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to present, and I would echo a lot of what Stuart had just said in regards to some of the previous conversation. Just this morning, for example, we met with some representatives from Honeywell, who just announced a major expansion of their plant right here in Olathe. And so we regularly are trying to meet with the community and industry partners and the K-12 as well, just to try to keep a finger on the pulse of what the changing needs are. So I'm pleased to be able to present to you today kind of what the K-State Olathe budget is going to be. As the third leg of the triangle here, our mission is kind of a dual mission of both academics as well as research. And so you have in front of you a printout copy of hopefully our budget in there. And I think you can see that clearly in how we outlined our budget to align and look similar to what KU Med and the KU Edwards campus produced, you can kind of see a lot of the expenditures are split between the academic programming line and the research line, and that reflects kind of that duality mission. When we set up the budget this year, we've been working towards greater transparency and alignment of what this campus does, and also to align with the goals that have been placed in front of the K-State Olathe campus by myself as well as President Linton, in addition to aligning it with the next gen strategic plan that I know KBOR is well aware of and what was launched at the Manhattan and university-wide level. While that was going on, K-State Olathe was also working on its strategic plan and seamlessly aligned that with the university level strategic plan. What the budget you have in front of you is helping us kind of point towards these 4 goals. I've placed in front of the campus a growth challenge of really identifying key academic programs that align with our historic mission, which has been in animal health, food safety and security, and then in close collaboration and working with KU and getting their blessing, allowing us to now expand into advanced manufacturing and adding some bachelor's degrees and some opportunities for non-credit and research that aligns with advanced manufacturing to try to reach an enrollment growth of 500 students in 5 years. We have about 150 students right now in our programs. Most of those are at the graduate level. We have added a number of undergraduate bachelor degree completion programs. The 2 that are the ones that KBOR approved last year, personal financial planning as a bachelor degree completion program, as well as the engineering technology degrees that have been added here as well. To align with that research piece of our mission, placed a challenge to continue to grow our research enterprise to average about $3 million a year over the next 5 years. We're about $1.5 million right now, almost $2 million in research expenditures, or sorry, research revenue. Most of that is done through fee-for-service type of activities, applied research, translational research, sensory and consumer studies, for example, runs a plethora of sensory studies out of our campus. Some of you may have been able to enjoy bacon or coffee through those consumer studies. That's all in an effort to really start to diversify the revenue streams. Right now, we are significantly funded by our JCERT tax revenue. We want to be more like Edwards campus and continue to grow some of the other revenue streams for our campus just for longer term sustainability, and it'll allow us to be more diversified in the types of research activities and academic programming we might be able to offer in the future. And then the other key piece that we've been talking about in the previous questions for Dean Day is really continue to enhance our engagement and outreach to strengthen those community and industry partnerships. The budget you have in front of you is really kind of grounded in the 6 strategic plan imperatives at the university level. And you'll see in the narrative that's also provided that many of those align with how we are looking at accelerating academic innovation, how we are looking at investing into our current employees to really focus on how we're enhancing student services on our campus to meet student needs, particularly as we start to grow the number of undergraduate students on our campus, being able to anticipate and be able to meet the needs of those students that are coming. Research is the transformational discovery piece there, as well as that engagement. I don't have a printout or a copy of what the KU Med and KU Edwards put in front of you, but hopefully you have it in front of you. Just want to draw your attention that just like the other 2 entities, we have conservatively picked $8 million as our projected revenue. We do see an increased growth in other source revenue for us, and that's about $1.3 million, and that's mostly from our applied research and fee-for-service types of activities. And then we also do considerable amount of non-credit programming, professional development programming on our campus. Excuse me. And we have added a number of new program areas in advanced manufacturing to support those industries, and we expect to see continued growth in revenue from those activities. Our expenditures, you'll see that all of those are focused to align with the strategic plan. The first is that we wanted to make sure we were investing in our employees, and so have dedicated some of our expenditure dollars on professional development and training for our existing workforce here on the campus. To support the growth of academic programs, particularly in engineering technology, we are allocating about 4 million for completion of our unfinished space. We have about 7,500 square feet of unfinished space on our campus. We are constructing 3 lab spaces in that area to support 2 classroom labs for engineering technology, and then a research and fee-for-service laboratory for bulk solids, which is relocating from the K-State Salina campus to the Olathe campus. In addition, we are also constructing a greenhouse on our campus to support increased activity in controlled environment ag as well as urban agriculture. We have, of course, the Urban Agricultural Institute that's run out of our campus here. And in anticipation, which hopefully we'll be able to bring in front of K-Board here soon, maybe looking at an undergraduate degree completion program in horticulture with a focus on urban food systems and sustainability. And then academic innovation to support the growth in academic programs in PFP, personal financial planning, and in engineering technology, investment in personnel costs for that. That does mean that we are spending more than we're bringing in with revenue, but we have committed to strategically investing from our reserves to support these activities. And so you'll see in the bottom columns there that for FY25, we do have a reduction of about 5 million from our strategic reserve balance to support the construction activities and the seeding of a research focus area in food as medicine. We are very excited to be working with a lot of different collaborators in and around Kansas City, including KU Med, Kansas City University, the medical school on the Missouri side, as well as KU Edwards campus in many of these different areas. And with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Dean Wolf. Any questions for Dean Wolf, the K-State Olathe campus? Yes, Regent Winter.
Dean Wolf, with respect to the your enrollment growth, your enrollment goals, what's been over the last couple of years the biggest challenge that you've had to face to hit or surpass, exceed those goals?
That's a great question, and I should point out that this is credit bearing growth. So these are our academic students. We already have a significant amount of non-credit students that we bring through our campus. So we really use the term learner as a broadscape. We already have a considerable amount of activity, but this is to really grow our academic programs. To answer your question, some of that has been a number of factors. One, when the original lane of this campus was set up, we had some changes in priorities at the state level as it related to the Kansas Bioscience Authority, and a lot of the programming that was our original lane, I think, inhibited some of the potential growth there. We are re-engaging and re-identifying a lot of different areas. We are seeing continued growth now in our veterinary biomedical science master's degree program, for example, which is really geared towards animal health, pharmaceutical development, working with companies like Elanco and Merck. In addition to really understanding what food safety and security is as it pertains to food manufacturing. And so kind of combining our advanced manufacturing efforts with food to think more broadly about food safety and security. And then just thinking in a larger way of how the term security means opportunities for us to grow as it relates to food production, as it relates to distribution of manufactured goods, and those sorts of things. And so I think moving forward, we have a pretty good idea of growth potential to get to that 500 number. But I think some of those are the historic factors that might have influenced why there's been some challenges to previous growth.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dean Wolf? Yes, Regent Brasser.
I noticed that on the programming side, we have reduced or are not budgeted for, I think, civil engineering and cybersecurity. Is there a reason why?
Are you, I guess, could you identify, we do not do civil or cyber on our campus? Are you looking at the K-State Olathe one? If it's on there, I missed it, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm on the KU one.
Okay.
You're good.
Stuart can maybe answer the question for you.
Anything you can add?
Yeah,
Stuart. answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. That cybersecurity, those certificates, we are eliminating. And then for civil engineering, those costs will be taken on by the School of Engineering. So we roll off JCERT funding when a program becomes sustainable on its own, or when it moves locations or schools.
Any other question? Yes, Regent Dykes.
Elaine, this might be for you, or is it just the accounting for the three different entities? They're all showing different revenue
Yeah,
projections this year versus in the past, it's always been
yes, and
split equally.
I suspect that's just a different point in time when different folks perhaps redid their 24 fiscal year forecast. Revenues for the sales tax come in monthly, and they get a report from the staff who support this. And I'm wondering if there's just a variance, but generally they're all locked in step. So whatever, if there's $1 million, then essentially you can think of 333,000. But they're all getting the same amount to the end. Yes. Yes, they were slightly. For 24.
25 years.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
And clearly this year we will be above $8 million, but I think the goal here was to be a little more conservative in predicting sales tax more recently has slipped a little bit. So they might be trying to be conservative in their approach for next year.
Any other questions for any of our presenters? Great presentations today. Any other questions? Yes, Regent Dykes.
Yeah, depending on what the legislature does with some of their tax proposals, if we do away with the food tax, does that impact?
It does. Well, it does to the consumer. This is still the same rate that the proportion of what comes in then does come to schools. So you're getting 1/8 of a cent from whatever is collected. So if suddenly food sales tax declines, and there's a big chunk that comes off, and I think they advanced that to a sooner date, maybe July 1, that would reduce.
Regent Lynn.
This is for any of you all. What one thing that you've thought of in the past would you like to see happen to allow for more cooperation, more coordination among all three entities? Is there such a thing? Or you all got together and said, gee whiz, if we could only do X, we would work together better?
Yeah, I can offer one item, and then anybody can follow up. But we have started meeting the three legs of the triangle. We are now considering bringing somebody on to do some combined strategic planning, and I think that would be the one area. We cooperate well. We have good working relationships. What we do is complementary. It doesn't overlap. But that one thing that I would like to see, and this is something that Ben and others are helping to facilitate, would be that a little bit more strategic movement going forward.
Regent Benson, this is David Varanikar. Could I make one just short comment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted, it may have been self-evident, but I wanted to point out what I think is a really neat story about the medical center's version of the JCERT program, which is that money really facilitated at the very beginning our ability to create this clinical research enterprise that we have running largely through our cancer center, but it includes some other areas as well, Alzheimer's and some other clinical research areas. But the key thing that I think is a really good story for KBOR and for the county, Johnson County, and for all of us really as a result of this program is we have brought in considerable other funding that supports what we do in clinical trials, which is what JCERT was intended to do for the medical centers portion of the triangle. So I don't remember the exact number. We're roughly $25 million of total funding, 8 of which comes from the JCERT funds approximately, and the rest is from pharma companies and other sources that really leverages $8 million of JCERT. So I think that's worth noting that this has really helped to multiply the economic activity, if you will, and the hiring and the staffing and all the rest that we all hope for has derived pretty significantly from the JCERT program, and it's really been important for the medical center.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I appreciate you saying that, David.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions this morning?
Well, I would just say the obvious, and I know you're working on this, but we're seeing much more cooperation among all of the different institutions. Example down in Wichita with the medical center. K-State's doing some things in cooperation with respect to its nursing program. I would just encourage us all to be very open to that and to identify ways that we can collaborate, cooperate, et cetera. We're clearly better together. And I know that's no news, but I want to acknowledge what's happening out there and urge you on to more of that.
It's well said. All right. Well, thank you all for your presentations this morning and appreciate what you do. Thank you again. All right. Moving next item on the new business agenda is to review the board agenda items under fiscal affairs. We are scheduled to hear to receive the capital improvement request, first read on that, also the 5-year plans for fiscal year 2026. Anything to add to that, Elaine or Chad?
We'll get an excellent presentation from Director Bristow this afternoon that I think will help set the stage for how this process fits in with the state's budget and how every month you get amendments to the program statements and new program statements, and how does it all fit together? So I think that'll help you understand the bigger picture of how it all works.
Sure. Very good. Look forward to that. We will also entertain a request from Kansas State to purchase property from the K-State Foundation. I know there was some discussion on that related to our agenda call a couple of weeks ago. Any questions or clarifications from my fellow regents related to that request? Obviously, the question came up about how often or what is the typical relationship between the institution and a foundation? And it may just be anecdotal, but at K-State, how has that typically been handled to where transaction of land between the foundation and the institution and charging or not charging?
So the context might be helpful too, is there have been multiple transactions that we've entered into where we've actually sold land to the foundation and received funding back, and which in the most recent example is the land that we sold out on the north edge of campus for about $8.6 million. That actually was then revenue that we were able to reinvest back into the global camp for the ag projects, the ag facility innovation projects. So we've had multiple transactions where we sold land to the foundation for seed funds that we've then invested back into institution. This instance, it's very similar where it's a reverse of that. Obviously, they own some land and it's contiguous to the campus. So it's our opportunity to make sure that we continue to have that opportunity to utilize that land in the future. So it's a back and forth relationship, and that's how we typically done that.
So the typical protocol would be to purchase it between two entities.
Yes, yeah. And we actually have a much older example where we did purchase land at our Unger facility, which is further up on Anderson Avenue. Foundation had owned a component of that building, and we bought that from them. This was back in 2014, 15. So it's a standard transaction practice that we have.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yes, Richard Winter.
That brings up a question. This is about a $3 million closed transaction, is that right?
Correct.
So what's the source of that funding from the university?
So it would be some part of our reserves that we have, cash balance reserves that we maintain. to utilize.
Can you give us an idea of the percentage, what percentage of your reserves is $3 million?
I have, it's not much at all. In comparison to the totality of the institution, there's not, it's less than 1%.
But I take it the source of those reserves is general use money, right? Correct?
Right.
This transaction where the university is buying from the endowment, how often does that happen? As opposed to a swap, I'm specifically talking about the university with general use money being the buyer, without any swap of real estate, et cetera. How often does that kind of transaction occur?
It's only incidental if the opportunity exists. So like I mentioned with to Regent Benson, we have sold land, university's owned land. We've sold that to the foundation. That happened along the North Edge corridor, Campbell Avenue. So we sold that to them. They had the opportunity then to further develop the Edge corridor, which they have done so and invested quite heavily in the Edge corridor by building some facilities out there. Ultimately, all of that works together as a partnership for the institution out there. In this instance, the university is seeing the opportunity to make sure that we preserve a large parcel of land that's contiguous to the campus. So we're going to then purchase that land that is owned by the foundation. So it just is as the opportunities arise, and we both feel that it's a strategic opportunity for us to move together.
And does the
Thanks, Kelly.
sorry.
That's my say by the bell ring.
I forgot my train of thought.
Called
I will think of some annoying question to ask you. Thank you.
That's good timing.
Kicking each other at the table.
All right, any other questions related to that? We just have the two discussion items on
Yeah,
this afternoon's agenda.
The
Okay,
few items on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Pages
We have
14.
you together, so.
President Linda will be up there. Yeah, let's see if our answer.
any questions or clarifications regarding the consent agenda or the discussion agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to review progress on State University Deferred Maintenance Initiative. Have any update on that, Chad? Hold on.
I'm having a recollection.
Oh.
Yeah,
Reverse of the senior mode.
when's the last time that you recall that this type of transaction occurred? That is, the university buying general use money, property owned by the.
I think it would have.
Is this a typical, does this happen annually?
No, gosh, no. It's just as the incidents or the stars align. I think the last time we did that, I'd have to go back and verify the dates, but it would have been back in 2014, 15. The foundation owned a component of the building out at our Unger property, which is kind of off-site location that we have further down on Anderson Avenue. We bought that from the foundation at that time. And at that time, then we were able to utilize that space to relocate a lot of our back end transaction staff into that facility that then freed up space on our Manhattan campus for other activities. So again, it's meant to be those opportunities that align, that's when we have those types of transactions, but it's not an annual.
So you have, like everybody, at all the institutions, you have a strategic plan with respect to real estate.
We are working on our campus master plan at the moment. This parcel is included in that master planning process so that we have the opportunity to determine what's the future look like for our physical campus, what's the opportunities, what do we need actually potentially as alternate and new facilities. So we'll have that as built into a component of our master.
You have an existing master plan
It was 2012 is when it was last completed. We are right in the midst of it. Actually, Director Baristo is part of our master planning committee. And so We should have that completed, I think, January 2025.
So with respect to that, well, acknowledging that's an older plan, the 2012 plan, does it speak at all to this property? Has this been on your plan for owning it?
Back in 2012, when that plan would have been completed, the property actually had a building on there that was leased by the university and utilized by our online education arm. When the pandemic, it was actually an old resident or a apartment building complex that we had converted to offices. When the pandemic hit, the decision was made for that online unit to go fully remote. And so at that time, then the university did not need that facility. And so the foundation raised the facility. So now it's a blank slate for us to imagine what we go from there.
Thank you.
And I think your point is also to be noted that sometimes it's impossible to forecast when property will come available.
Yes.
Sometimes property owners are boot sales, sometimes
Yeah.
they're not.
Yep, exactly right.
So you just kind of take those in.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thanks so much. All right, State University Deferred Maintenance Initiative, Director Bristow.
Yeah, thank you, Vincent. I would just say that we are looking forward to bringing about 2 years worth of work with our consultant group to fruition here this spring and definitely close out our efforts by the end of this fiscal year. And one big result is a space needs analysis tool that we've talked about. We're in the process currently of working with each of the universities to calibrate that space needs model and make sure that it matches their data. So once we get those calibrated, it'll represent a new tool that a lot of the universities will have to navigate their space optimization component within their master planning processes. So many universities are in the process of updating this master plan. So really looking forward to that. I would offer today.
Will be useful. All right, any audits for review or discussion, Elaine? All right, we are way ahead of schedule. Any other business to come before the committee this morning? No, we will stand adjourned, and I'll say thanks everybody for your time and preparation. Elaine, thanks for keeping us in line.
Yeah,
We will adjourn.
thank you.